Hello everyone, welcome to this demo session on SAP Fiori security training. In this training session, we will learn how does the basic SAP Fiori security works. We will talk about in this course advanced Fiori content. This is part 2 of 3 video demo series. So if you have not seen the part 1 of this demo series, I will put the link into the description of this video. So from there you can find the part 1 of the. In the part 1 video, we started discussing about the concept of different business roles and different personas which are existing today in the technical world of Fiori security. And in this part, we will continue from there. Okay, so now I will come back to our logon page, and this is the logon page. So now the first thing which is the authentication. As I mentioned, first user should be able to enter in the system, and after user enter in the system, then only they can do something, right? So how do you enable authentication? So for that, as a basis consultant, as a security consultant, I should be able to create the user. But before that, let's complete this one. What is a UI5 developer does? They will create brand new Fiori applications. They will deploy these applications in the system. They will be mainly working as a developer to code the apps, right? So you have got a requirement, so you got to analyze the requirement, you got to develop everything from scratch. They will be also developing the OData service. So don't worry if you don't know what is OData service. In my next unit, in my next chapter, I will cover a recap of our foundation course to make you recall or to make you understand what is an OData, what is a Fiori app, what is an application, how do we create, what tools do we use. All these things I will explain you in our next unit, in our next session. So those who are coming from completely non-development background, for them also, don't think it will be a black box. I will not make you give, or I will not give you like very heavy dose of antibiotics. So you will be getting light doses so that you can understand these things, even you are not from a technical or non-developer background. Of course, those who have attended my UI5 foundation course, a great advantage for you because you already know the concepts and my style of training. So it will be a great advantage because you know already these concepts. However, for you as well, it's been maybe a long time. I will cover the recap of first course in 2 hours. So that's the main job responsibility. They install tools like webide to develop the apps, and they are the developers. So at times they also sometimes works as Launchpad Designer. So they will also can do Launchpad Designer. So this is one function which not just a security consultant do, but also UI5 developer can also do, because you are already seeing that in your company. Your manager is asking, hey, you developed a nice beautiful app, we liked it, very nice, but how about accessing this app? How can my users, how can my business access this Fiori application? So that's where the Fiori developer also can come into picture. They can actually do these activities in the system. And then comes another concept. This is very specific now in context of S4 HANA, because S4 HANA is the new business suite. S4 HANA is the solution which is going to pertain for future in the market always, all the time. So that's where this concept is coming up into the picture. I'll cover an overview for this guy as well. So this is called key user in the system. Okay, what is it called? Key user. This is a little key user concept. So we will actually also cover the key user concept in this course. Those who are working on S4 HANA, you would have heard about key user. Now, what are the main job roles for the key user? The key user, however, in the system does UI adaptations. Like how to, if I just want to, without any coding, add a simple custom field, I can do that as a key user adaptation easily in the system. All right, so that's what the key user actually does. They also does customization in the system. Their job role is mainly to make a bridge between business and technical consultant. So we'll talk about key user adaptation like in-app extensibility with S4. So that is an additional concept I will be giving you as part of this training, because many of you will be also working as an S4 HANA consultant in a S4 HANA project as a Fiori consultant. So this will be little more helpful for you. Of course, there are more people like analytic expert whose job is to use S4HANA embedded analytics. So this is also one part we will be covering. So I'm writing here all the things which we will be definitely touching upon or covering in this entire course, so that you can understand how many things, how many opportunities you have ahead in your career. You can actually go to any project, any country, anywhere, wherever you like to work. You will actually become an end-to-end complete Fiori developer. In stack of the Fiori layer, you will be able to do everything, almost everything, whatever comes on your way at the completion of this project, at the completion of this course. So analytic expert is to design the KPIs. That's what we call key performance indicator. There's a KPI framework offered in S4HANA which we can use to create KPI tiles. There will also be able to create analytic and smart filter apps. So this is something I will be also covering as part of this course. Yeah. And then of course you have super administrators, super users, who are the overall owners of the system. Maybe we don't get into it much. These are the people who are the owning the system. So they will actually create the first basis user. The first security user is created by them, and from there onwards this guy does multiplication. This guy creates more administrators, this guy creates more users, this guy creates more authorization roles, responsibilities, and then accordingly assign those roles and responsibilities to the end user. So this is in a nutshell the different roles and responsibilities which we have today in the market. And as you can see, you can learn these things, and after learning all these things you can actually go to any project of your choice. You will become a complete end-to-end Fiori architect. And not that all, we also have a concept of Fiori UX designer, which is also of course a very important aspect in this course we will be covering. Many times they come up with the requirement, the business come up with the requirement. They say, can you first do a prototype, a POC? Have you heard about this word called POC, proof of concept? And then maybe if you like it, we want to experience it, and if we like it, then maybe we want to go with full-fledged development. So can you please do a quick POC? So that's where the UX designer comes into picture. The UX designer role is to actually give an direction. This is also a very important bridge between the functional teams, the business users, and the developers. So this is the person who is actually going to create UI user personas. Now, this is not SAP GUI personas. Don't confuse here. User persona is about depicting a real life user or real user. For example, Mr. James. Mr. James is working as an account receivable accountant in a company, is an owner of a BMW 8 A8 model car, having three children's, living into is Stanford University. He's working with the company like last 20 years, has been an active contributor. That's a persona, that's a user persona, which is actually telling you about what this user is all about. What is the main job functions of this user, roles, responsibilities? Because the UX designer is actually focused on UX tasks, creating the prototypes, taking approval for these prototypes, finalizing the prototypes, adjusting the look and feel, checking the app if it is responsive in mobile, does it behave good in mobile, in tablet and desktop. So all these things are done by UX designers. So for that, what we use a tool called build.me. This is also covered in the current course. So we'll learn how can we use build tool to actually design a prototype. And guys, we have a latest feature with build where you can now export a build project directly to webide. We will also cover that topic as part of this course. So I hope you guys have got now an idea on what is that we will be doing throughout this. Of course, SAP UI5 Developer, this part I will not be touching because this is covered in our foundation course, and ideally you should know this if you want to do an extension. And by the way, here of course we will cover some part, Launchpad Designer, one part which is very important, and also extend the standard Fiori application. Exactly, this is important. So if SAP delivered a standard app, and let's say I want to add just a custom field to my Fiori app, how do you do that? So that is something a Fiori developer does. So for that, you should have an idea of MVC architecture and the foundation course. But hey, hold on. If you don't have that idea, no problem. At least you will be able to do this stuff, basic stuff, easily with the help of my teaching techniques. Okay, so now with that, let's quickly move on and see one small use case, take one small use case. What I want to do as a Fiori security consultant, what use case I'm taking. So take a scenario here. So we are working as a Fiori security consultant in the company, and I have been given a task to create a new user and allow the new user to access SAP Fiori Launchpad for the first time. Yeah. So the first thing is create a user. That is your authentication. And then do the following. So first task is to check if the user can access the Fiori Launchpad. The second requirement is you need to do something so that user should be able to access purchase order standard applications delivered by SAP. Clear, everyone? This is our first task we want to do as a Fiori security consultant. Okay, so how do we achieve this? So I will not go depth into it because it's a demo session. I will probably not cover every single aspect, deep dive inside the concept of semantic object, action, concept of intent-based navigation, the structure of the launchpad itself. What is a launchpad? Is a launchpad HTML? What is FLP? What is cache buster? We'll not go deep dive, but just try to see how we can achieve this simple requirement as a security consultant, create a user and allow user to access some apps related to purchasing. So that is what I want to show in a simple flow as a demo. Of course, in the course, when we go inside, we'll have a deep dive so you understand all these concepts as part of Fiori security as well as Fiori developer. So let's go ahead and create a user. So the transaction code in SAP system, I just logged in into our SAP system. The transaction code to create a user is SU01. I just go in there, and now I go inside and I just create a user. So let me create a user called B user. So you see here I have a B user, and I'm just entering a password for B user, say log on, and you see this doesn't have a user. I mean, system doesn't allow me to log in because the user doesn't even exist. You can also cross check here. Do we have a B user? So this is, by the way, business user I'm trying to create, and I see if I just say change it, you see the B user does not exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So those who want a server access, we have provision also for server access where you can practice all these things which I'm showcasing you. So don't panic. I will explain you what options we have for server access so you can actually practice these things in our in the server environment. So don't worry about that. We will also provide you the required server access so that you can practice all these things in the system. And this server, we can practice everything: Fiori Launchpad, Launchpad Designer, UI5 development, Fiori development, OData development, extension. All these things you can practice in this server actually. And the best part is you can access this server from local computer. In your local SAP GUI, you can add this server and you can practice. And this single server is an S4 HANA server. You can actually also practice ABAP on HANA. The concepts of CDS views, AMDP, ADBC, SQL scripting, all these things you can also practice in the same server. All my courses which I'm offering, almost every course, you can practice in this single machine, single server. Okay, so now we don't have this user, so I want to create a user. And it says sometime I found that this user was already created by somebody. Do you want to add this data to the user? I said no, I want to create a fresh user. So now I'm creating a fresh B user here, and I'll say Mr. and I'll say Anubhav from onlinefioritrainings.com. That's our website. And I just click on log on data, and I will set an initial password. So I will set it as init1, enter, and now I save this. So we have created, congratulations, a new user as a security consultant. So that first job is done. So let's see if user can access something. So if I go back and just again double click here, and I try to now log in with the B user, I try to log in with the password which I set as a security guy. So I tell, hey business user, now your user exists, please go and log in. This is the initial password. So they will now go log in, and oops, I'm so sorry. I forgot the password, is it? Let me just check. Yes, I remember. So now you see here, it prompts the new user a prompt for changing the password. Of course, this is the basics of security. A new user was created, and I just given it to them, and now they can keep their own password. So let's put a password as, I just keep a password. Okay. So now you see it has got access, and now user is able to go inside the system. So what is this process? This is called authentication. User has got a authentication successful, and user entered in the system. That's the first step towards security. Anybody want to become a security consultant, this is the first step, authentication. And a very important interview question, even I've seen with experience of 4 year, 5 year, 6 year Fiori or 4 or 5 year security experience, when I ask this basic question, what is the difference between authentication and authorization, people are not able to answer in a right way. Okay, sometimes they try to answer, sometimes they may know it, but they cannot frame it. So that's the main idea. We will be covering all the interview questions as well as part of our PPT. So you guys can easily answer these things similarly in the interview. It will be quite easy for you to crack an interview. Okay, let's come back now. So now this user doesn't have any authorization. So maybe just try to log on the Launchpad. This is the Launchpad. And now I'm just trying to log on with this UB user on the Launchpad. Let me click on log on. And now you see authentication is working. So it's going to take user inside the Launchpad because he has a valid user into the system. But once it takes inside, you will see in a second what will happen. Voila, there you go. You see the first issue popping up, it's a security. It's a security. He or she doesn't have now an authorization. That's a level 2. They are able to authenticate, go inside, but they don't have authorization. That's why this error comes up. Many of you have seen this error in your company also probably, and this is exactly what happens because they don't have the authorization to access certain things. What is that certain thing? Basically now I'll quickly go to a basic part. So guys, anytime you are working with Fiori system, Fiori architecture. So what is the architecture of Fiori application? Every Fiori application, so typically we have a Fiori application, and this Fiori application talks to an SAP system. Basically it's an ABAP system. Okay. Typically this system is called Fiori front-end system, or also known as SAP gateway system. Okay, this is what the system is called. So any Fiori application, it cannot talk to your conventional ERP objects. Like it cannot talk to a transaction code, it cannot talk to a module pool, it cannot talk to a BAPI, it cannot talk to a function module, it cannot talk to a subroutine, it cannot talk to an ABAP program, it cannot. What a Fiori application understand, this is a very important point to note. Many people have this myth. Anubhav, can I use CDS view in my Fiori app? It's a myth. You cannot. You cannot use any single thing in Fiori app. It doesn't understand anything. Then you say, how are the people creating sales order then? If it doesn't understand BAPI. So guys, try to understand Fiori app only and only talks to something called an OData service. That's all. And the service implementation, there will be a class where the implementation code for this service will be written. In that implementation, actually, that's where you will have in that implementation in the Fiori OData implementation is where that BAPI is being invoked, that workflow is being invoked, that maybe any program is being invoked or subroutine is being invoked. So Fiori application doesn't understand anything. It just understands an OData service. So actually, when you see this Launchpad is also a Fiori application. Yes, exactly. It's also a Fiori application itself. So now it needs an OData service. It needs certain OData service. But a new user who is a fresher, who is just came into the company, just created a user. This user by default doesn't give authorization to this OData service. So nobody gets by default an access to the OData service because this itself is an artifact. OData itself is an artifact, and we need to also secure this artifact, not just our Fiori application, but also the artifact needs to be secured. So we need to actually give authorization to this access this OData service securely to our new user. Now, when it comes to Fiori Launchpad, SAP Fiori Launchpad, there are certain OData service it needs. So SAP Fiori Launchpad, to access it, we need authorization to two important services. The first service is called /interop service, UI2. And second is /UI2 page builder force service. These are all two services, OData services, which are pre-delivered by SAP. Okay, you see the namespace doesn't start with Z or Y. Okay, which means these services are standard. They are delivered by SAP. Okay, but when you start a new system, when your company just given you a fresh system, you got to activate these services first of all. So if you are working as a Fiori security consultant, the first thing you need to understand is there are these two services which are delivered by SAP to you, and you need to first step is to activate. So now I'm going to the task one. I'm going to complete the task one, which I just mentioned here in the scenario. So create a new user. So I just say create a new user. So the first task I would say create a user. So this we have done it. This is okay. But now we need to give access to the Launchpad. But to give access to the Launchpad itself should work, right? So to configure the Launchpad, step number one is we need to make sure that these services are active. Okay, so where do you go and check that? Where do you see if the services are active? So for that we go to transaction code /n. Okay, this is my business user I logged in as. You see B user, so I just close this instance. I don't want it. I want to just sit to use on Launchpad. Maybe I go to my user, the user which I will give it to you guys will have the authorization to do all that stuff. So now here actually I go to /iwfnd /main service transaction. I'll put this in the PPT so you guys can also try this up. This is where we go /iwfnd /main service transaction, and here is where you have to cross check if interop service is registered or not. So in a new system it won't be registered. You need to register it for the first time. So the T code to register, use a /n /main service. This is the T code you have to go. And after you reach here, let me just type in /n/iwfnd main service. We are already here, sorry. It's already it's already there. I have also added here in my favorites. You can see main service just to make it easy. And I can go inside. And now here we have to check if interop service is registered. So you can just apply filter and you say type external service name star interop star. And now you see the interop service is already registered and active. You can see this green icon at the bottom. This is your service name. And you can see this green icon. So which means it's been already activated. Since this is a server we're using quite some time, this is already active. Now the second service is the page builder page builder pers service called personalization service. I will explain you the purpose of services also in a minute. So I go to page builder pers service, press enter, and you see this is the page builder pers service. Also again the namespace you see /UI2. So namespace and the service name is pers, and this is also active here. Cool. So this is so important, guys. The first step you got to check as a consultant, the service is active and they are green. If they are not, no matter what security you apply, no matter what role you create, you will not be able to give access to the Launchpad for the first time to your users. All right, step by step, line by line. You know me, I never do a copy paste of code and never learn from trainers who teaches you copy paste of code, because they are cheating you, they're not teaching you. So this way you will never be able to learn. Start from the foundation, from very basics. This is the style, this is the way forward. This is how we learn things step by step, and then we become an expert into the training, into the content. So we have done that now here. And if it is not active, what you do? I told you that this should be active, but if it is not, then what will you do? So you have to go to add service. And in the add service, you have to put a system alias. So now in the next session, I will tell you about the architecture. What are the proposed architectures for an SAP Fiori systems? So we have Fiori front-end system and Fiori back-end system. So in that case, we will also look at the concept of our alias name. This is also the task of a Fiori security or Fiori administrator, Fiori consultant, to create system alias, to maintain them, to create RFC connections. All this we will be learning in our coming class. Don't worry. So right now I just keep it local, and now here you have to give your service name. So page builder pers, okay, press enter, and you will see that entry here. So since it's already registered, it's not coming, guys. But if you just put this and say get service, you will see that entry over here. You select the entry and say add selected service, and then you put it into a package and also lock it in a transport request and release it so that it reaches to your quality and production system accordingly. So that's very important. But service is there doesn't mean that user have access to it, correct? You see on the UI, when this user logs in, user is getting an error. Now to troubleshoot a little bit, press F12 on your browser. F12 is your best friend. And if you see here, there are a lot of reds. So it is clearly saying that, boss, the get for this particular Z interop service has failed. Yeah. So console, this is called console. F12 on your any browser you are working, I would recommend you to use Chrome browser. Okay. But if you're working with any browser, press F12, go to console, you will see this red. This red is indicating why the page has not loaded. So it's clearly telling you that, boss, I am not able to load the page because something is wrong with interop. Yeah, it's trying to call some interop and it's failing because the interop I don't have, maybe it's not active or I don't have access to the interop service. So now the question comes is, how do we create some kind of access? So as I mentioned in my last PPT, we just discussed about it, that first is authentication and second comes is authorization. So authorization is controlled by roles. So now as a Fiori security consultant or a basis consultant, I need to create a role, and that role I need to add the necessary authorizations, necessary access point for the service so that my users can access that service. So let's go ahead and do that. So guys, there's also a concept of Fiori front-end server and Fiori back-end server. I will cover that in our next class. So right now I just show you the steps, but not maybe go into the deeper of what is the meaning of SV and SG. I'll show you just in a second. So let's go back, and now I'm going to create a role. So the transaction code to create a role, the next step, I'll just note down these so you don't do remember them. So after service is active, we need to now create a role to provide access to those OData services to our business users. So let's do that. So how do you create a role? The T code to create a role is PFCG. So don't worry, if you've been in ABAP, if you've been as a programmer, you will learn these concepts pretty easily and nicely. You don't have to panic, okay? I'm there with you. All right, so let's come here, PFCG, and I just go inside, and I want to create now a new role. So I will just give this role as Z Anubhav Basic FLP. Just want to give this name. Of course, in your company, there will be some naming convention you will be using based on your company requirements. So typically what we do is, guys, we use name as Z. Of course, it's your own role. So you just start with Z or Y always, and then you say SAP underscore UI underscore user, something like this, or FLP user, something like this. You want to use it as more understandable, more meaningful for your end. Maybe I will use this one only, so makes it pretty handy and easy for us. I just come back and put it here, and now we can click on create a role, please. And now you see I just put a description. This role is to provide access of Fiori Launchpad to my users. Press enter. Yes, click on save. Yes, please, fine, no problem. And now I go to the menu part, and here we will start adding those access to those two services. So when it comes to adding access to service, there are two things which you need to add. One is you need to add the service metadata authorization, which comes from the gateway system, IWSG, and one is service backend authorization, which comes from IWSV. So these two things we need to add it here. So now I will just go to here and click on authorization default, and now I first choose target service, and here we'll choose IWSV. This is first thing which you have to choose, and now just search for interop star interop star, press F4, and you see this slash UI2 interop is visible, IWSV. This is for the backend authorization for the service. And then again star page builder PERS, personalization. So I will also explain you in a minute difference between personalization, customizing, and configuration. You need to understand that. That's very important. It's a very important interview question. As a security consultant, you must know these terminologies. All right, so we added IWSV, and I say copy, and it's been added here. And now I again click on authorization default, and now I choose IWSG. So this is how we also give access to any OData service to our users. Any OData service, this is how we give it. And now I will come here and I will say again interop. That's the front end authorization now I want to add. And you see now this is your front end Z. It starts with Z. We registered the service with Z namespace, so it's there. I say select it, and now I also choose page builder first. Press F4 and just choose this one. Click on OK. Step by step, guys. Every single step I'll show you like this. No copy paste of code, no copy paste of things, no copy paste of stuff, because that's where you will not understand. And this is the major problem till today. Or any internet blog you see, any tutorial you see on internet, you will find the people everywhere just do a copy paste. Okay, this way you doesn't get the clue what's going on, right? So important. Say copy now, and these four things are now part of it. I click on save, And now we have to go to authorization. So every role, we then need to create something called a profile. So it's a concept of role profile, role profile, role profile as a security consultant. So what is the concept of role and profile? So what happens is you create a role against an authorization object. So what exactly happens is you have something called an authorization object in SAP. An authorization object gives you authorization for certain piece of software. For example, there is a standard authorization object called tcode. Now, this authorization object, tcode, I think it's tcode, is actually a standard authorization object to give authorization for any transaction code to the user. Now, this authorization object is added inside a role. So it's always a one-to-n relationship between roles and authorization objects. So it's a one-to-n relationship. So if one, it's actually n-to-n, n-to-m, because one authorization object can be added in multiple roles, and one role can contain multiple authorization objects. Yes, it's an end-to-end relationship. And then if you have a role, you will then create a profile out of that role. So that's a one-to-one relationship for one role can have one profile inside. Now, what exactly the profile contains? So when you create a role, in this role you've added this T code, but you didn't tell yet that this authorization object is here, but you didn't tell that once this role is granted to somebody, you will give role to someone, role to a user. Which T code user will get authorization, right? So this authorization object grants the role for a transaction code in SAP, but now you don't know which transaction code the user will get an access when we assign this role to them. So that value is maintained in the profile. So profile is actually the runtime information or actual authorization control information for any authorization object. So basically, this contains authorization object values. So this contains the values for authorization object. All right. So suppose there is an authorization object which is standard called S underscore service. This is an authorization object which SAP created to give access for any auditor service. Now, which service you want to give? You don't want to give all the service access to everyone, right? If you do that, then people will access your data and they will take it away, they will steal it. A user in a company who's working a very low level, he's just joined from your competitor, he still has contacts in the competition. He can just query your business partner data, takes out all your supplier, all your customers, and give it to the competitor. So that's where the security comes into picture. So this is an object. It's a very granular level here. So this is an object as service. Now, when I create a role and add this object here in the role, I have to generate profile to say which service. Yes, we understand you want to give service authorization. You want to give service authorization. We understand that. Fine. But which service? You cannot say everything. You can actually say everything. If I put the value as star, which means everything. So that's what is controlled by profile. So profile contains the values. So it's a one-to-one relationship typically between the role and the profile. I'll show you in a second when we generate profile for these services, what will happen. And then finally, the role is created and this role is granted to the user. So our business user, the final user who is using the software will get this role assigned so that they will get the necessary authorization. So this is the typical ABAP authorization concept which we have. So one user can have how many roles, and one role can be assigned to how many users? It is again star to star, end to M relationship. So this is again one role can be assigned to many users and one user can have many roles. Clear, everybody? So this is in a nutshell, simple concept of role profile in user, the relationships between them. So let's go back. And now it's time for me to create the profile here. So you see this change authorization data to generate the profile, click on OK. And now you would see if you expand it, there is this S service authorization object which is added. which gives access to the service. And SAP, since I mentioned in my authorization section all the service names, it has taken those service IDs. So we mentioned how many? We mentioned 4, right? So you see here there are 4 unique IDs which are assigned, which are actually technical IDs for those services. They are actually assigned over here to this S service object. So service name and service type. So that is what is automatically came in. It's green, everything looks good, and I just click on generate. So you would see a profile will be generated. So this is the profile name. I say okay, please, fine, and I can go back, and now you see a profile has been created, okay, which contains the runtime value for authorization object. And now it's time that we assign this to our user. So I go to users tab and I can assign this here. So I say my B user, which I have, please give this role to them. Anubhav onlinefioritrainings.com, that's the user we've created, and just click on this button and save the role. And now you see the user tab also turning green. So you see these 3 things we have given. So first we added the services in the menu tab, the backend and the front end service information. Then we created the profile. We just checked that profile has got an authorization object automatically called as service, which has those 4 service information. Then we grant this role, assign this role to user. So here you can of course add multiple users, so that accordingly you will get the authorization. And now I just save, go back to my Fiori Launchpad, and you see this error is coming earlier. So let's go ahead, keep the console open so that you can see if there is other error comes up. So I refresh now, and let's see what happens. So when I refresh now, you see guys, it's starting up and there is no error coming. Awesome. Can you see there is actually no error anymore on the UI? So even you can try closing this, close this guy, bye-bye. I just try another incognito window for Chrome browser. It's an amazing feature. Again, ask me username, password. I just again log in, be user with my username, password, click on log on, and you will see now, do we get that error again? So I just refresh and you see press F12. There is no error in the console, no red anymore. Congratulations. Your task number 2 is done. You have successfully given the necessary authorization to your business user to access the Fiori Launchpad. Now you'll say, Anubhav, but I don't see any app here, Anubhav. What is the meaning of this? Of course, there is no meaning of giving an empty access for an empty launchpad to your business user. Doesn't make sense, of course. They want to use launchpad for accessing the app, like leave request creation, like maybe creating a timesheet entry, maybe creating an event or creating a promotion. So of course it doesn't make sense, but at least you can see this user is successfully able to now see the launchpad, doesn't have really much problem in here accessing the launchpad. He get these basic features of the launchpad earlier, whereas there was an error coming. Now that error is gone. So that's how you troubleshoot. You solve the error as well. Many of you also mailed me a couple of times in the past, Anubhav, we are getting this group not loading error. That's how the problem is solved, step by step, line by line. Okay, please feel free to email to Meenakshi, and she will give you the necessary details. If you guys want server access also, you can also ask her. She will provide you the details for server access as well. I had put the email ID in the chat window. You guys can copy from there. You can also reply on our website, and then she will come into action and reply. So guys have to check out, because there are so many emails coming up. Yesterday we had a demo on foundation course, and today we have a demo on advanced course. We're starting first time 2 batches together. So it's a little tricky happening for me. I have a couple of meetings also lined up. For more questions, feel free to email me directly. You all have my email ID, or you can email to Meenakshi as well. Thank you so much. Catch you up. Goodbye.